Here is a motion picture film. Let's tidy up this tangle of film by putting it on a reel.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to Film Swap. My name is David Seeley, a very croaky David Seeley, by the way, and this is my esteemed co-host. And yes, it is the one and only ecstatic gaucho himself, Mr. Jonathan Pritchard Barrett. And right here beside me, I've got a very special guest, and Jonathan's going to introduce him.
Right, this is George.
Good to be here. Thanks, guys. Good to be here. Thanks for having me. Thanks
George
for the ride.
Coutsoudis. Is that right?
Beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful
And
said.
he is a producer, a musician, a singer, actor, which I've had the great pleasure of several times treading the boards with George here in the local theater, and he's a very talented man. And we're very pleased to have him here tonight with us.
Thanks for having me, Pierce. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So special is he that I've actually let him into the inner sanctum of nerddom.
Oh, I love it.
He's here in the actual the deep dungeon of hoarding Blu-ray, OCD hoarder.
So it all happens.
Place. So this is where it's all at, and he's sitting here with me tonight. So welcome, George.
Thanks for having me.
We also have another very, very special guest, a returning guest, a much beloved guest from all the way from Los Angeles. And she is Amelia Eichler, who is the AKA the Mistress of the Reel. And in Los Angeles, she works as a theater manager at the USC cinemas, doesn't she? So she's gets her hands on those beautiful, lovely 35 millimeter prints over there, and we're very, very happy to have her back. Actually, Amelia,
I'm so happy to be here.
Fantastic. The episode that you were on previously, the Reel Experience, is our single most popular episode. Did you know that?
Wow.
I did not know that. That's super special. I think has it almost been exactly a year since I was last on?
Oh, it was more like sort of early summer, I think, wasn't it? Because we've only been doing
That's right.
A year.
That's right.
We're coming up on our first anniversary now.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, and so for us, and this is going to be our last episode of the year. And I would mention we've had a little bit of an abnormal gap between episodes, and the reason for that is because we've for a variety of things that were outside of our control, we had to postpone some of our recordings, and so there's been a little bit more of a gap than usual. And there's probably going to be a little bit of a gap between this one and the next one because this is kind of the end of the year. So we're going to do this episode as a little wrap up for the year, and then we'll be back at some time in the sort of first part of January. So I'm just letting the listeners know that to savor this episode because it's going to be the last one for a few weeks, I think. But that's why we've packed it full of super extra special guests. And we're talking about some extra super special films as well. Jonathan, did you want to tell people a little bit about the theme for tonight's episode?
So tonight, because we're coming up to this sort of, we're in the sort of festive period. Over here, I suppose we call it the festive period. I suppose in North America, it's more the holidays, and basically sort of Christmas films is what we're talking about, I suppose, broadly. And in fact, these ones are they have, I guess the first one, they're sort of alternative Christmas films, you could say. The holidays they are celebrating are both Christmas, that are addressed, but they're not really. The second, in one of them, it happens to occur around Christmas, but it's just sort of that doesn't seem to be key to it necessarily, but it's part of it definitely. Anyway, so that's the theme.
Well, Christmas time or holiday time, we shouldn't just say Christmas because obviously not everybody celebrates Christmas. So we want to sort of make sure we're including everybody.
Yep.
But this is the time of year, we're coming up to year end and it's holiday times for lots of people. So we just thought it'd be a good time to reflect on things. And I think both of these films are very much about reflection, aren't they? On the past and on the future. And on our beliefs and our principles and our ideals and things like that. So we thought we picked a couple films that, although I think Jonathan's right, they're not technically necessarily Christmas films, but they're both sort of set predominantly at Christmas. And I think they kind of thematically really fit well with the holidays. But you can watch them any time of the year, can't you? And I think also we're going to then spend a little bit of time towards the end of the show talking a bit about actual holiday films and our own sort of traditions, because I think everyone has their own sort of favorites and things that they like to watch during the holiday season. So we thought we'd give everyone a chance to sort of talk a little bit about some of their favorites.
Nice.
Yeah, does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So I think, Jonathan, you picked the first film tonight.
Yes.
We're going to start out first talking about Éric Rohmer's. What year was that? 1969.
Yeah.
Yeah, My Night at MAUD'S. Take her away, Jono.
Well, it's Ma Nuit chez Maud. It's the French title. For some reason, in the United States, it was translated as My Night at Maud's, whereas in the UK, it was My Night with Maud. A little sort of change there, but chez, I think, is with. Anyway, doesn't matter too much. It's basically the same, pretty much.
You know that folks in the UK, they're always being awkward, aren't they?
We love to be awkward. Finicky is what we are. So
that's just a joke, by the way, folks. Don't write in or get upset with us.
So this was directed by Éric Rohmer, French director, but although his real name was Jean-Marie Maurice Scherer, I believe. I hope that's the right way to pronounce it. And he's one of the great sort of new wave directors, French new wave, the Nouvelle Vague, new wave of French films. And this was his sort of breakthrough film. And it's basically set sort of just a day or two before Christmas Day and on Christmas Day and perhaps the day or two after. But Christmas, it sort of plays a role in it, but it's not a massive role. It is, we will find out. And your one, David, what's yours?
Well, and like all great Christmas movies, My Night at Maud's starts with a stocking, doesn't it?
Yes.
So that's worth talking about as well. Very Christmassy indeed.
Yes.
So yeah, I'll just quickly. I mean, we're going to talk about it a little bit more in depth in a little bit. But our second film is Fanny and Alexander, which is of course one of the last great masterpieces from Ingmar Bergman. One of his final films, and a really amazing sort of epic story about change. Really, isn't it? It's about a family unit that is suddenly thrust into some major changes, and how that impacts them and some of the choices that they make, and it all kind of comes to a head, and it has within it lots of sort of interesting things to pick apart, which we'll maybe do a little bit in a little while. But first, let's dig into My Night at MAUD'S. Yes. Shall we? And I don't know, shall we give Amelia first chance to talk a little bit about her impressions?
So I'm a big fan of Existential Christmas, which is I feel like that's how to describe this film.
Perfect. Perfect.
Or just like I've never really considered a new wave Christmas. Like I just never thought about watching a new wave film that's, I mean, obviously there's always the debate of whether it's Christmas film or, you know, whether Christmas just takes place in the background of the film and it's not like almost like Christmas is a character in the film. But I love the existentialism of the human existence of all these different religions and all the separate characters representing like those kind of archetypes of those religions. Because like you said earlier, you know, we are saying holidays to be inclusive. And in this way, this film is almost kind of inclusive if you think about it. Obviously the stocking, which I'll bring up, kind of ties into my other film that I might bring up towards the end that also has Christmas stocking, which is I guess like a theme. I don't know. Maybe someone should make a list of Christmas stocking film. Yeah, I never really thought about that. Same with like new wave
Amelia,
Christmas.
let's save that subject for next Christmas. We'll do that as another episode.
Yeah, right. I just never really thought about new wave Christmas, and I really like that concept of Christmas is always thought to be a happy time, but the film doesn't necessarily reflect that, and I think that that's part of the human existence, that just because there is a happy holiday happening and there's all these expectations, it doesn't necessarily it's a lot of time of reflection and a lot of time of like you said with Fanny and Alexander, obviously we'll talk about that in a minute, but change is happening. It's like the new year, Christmas, it's like the end of the year, there's a lot of changes happening. And I think that's reflective in the characters as they kind of pontificate throughout the film. But I really enjoyed it. I've never heard of that film before, so I'm really excited that that was a choice, especially like it being not something that you would think of as a Christmas film.
Yeah. It's very much an alternative Christmas film.
Yeah, I like that. I like that wording, alternative Christmas film. Yeah.
Exactly. So have you seen many Éric Rohmer films before, Amelia?
I haven't. This is my first one.
Okay. Yeah, same with me.
Oh, well, he's Éric Rohmer. He's great. He's sort of the affluent white people sitting around talking. That's what his films are all kind of like. But when I say that, that sounds facetious. But to be honest, he's made a lot of really, really great films he's probably one of the few directors who can make a film just about really clever people sitting around having conversations, and actually they're riveting and quite interesting and enthralling and engaging on many different levels. And I think that's why he's quite an important director, and he's made several really, really brilliant films, which I think this is one, isn't it? What did you think, George? Was this your first time seeing it?
Yes, first time seeing it. I saw Christmas very much as a backdrop to the film. It gave they had the mass, which gave us a chance just to see people in the church, and for me, it really brought out the quite almost catatonic state and almost hypnotized state that people were in, and seeing this pastor or priest or whatever he was just kind of going on about Christianity and what Jesus was and what it means and what it means to be a Christian. And I'm not particularly religious personally myself, so it spoke truths to me in terms of how I think catatonic is the best way I could describe it, in terms of seeing the people in the church almost not really thinking for themselves, but being told what to think by this man preaching from the pulpit. In terms of the character, I've got it written up. What the main character is, Jean-Louis.
Well remembered.
Oh, thank you. I find it interesting how he's quite driven by his obsession with maths, and how he tried to almost bring in this mathematical equation to his life, and how he tried to rationalize what his role as a Christian was, and almost with all the readings, like all those references to Pascal as well, when he was reading the works of Pascal throughout the book. And almost trying to rationalize his view and the battle between him as a Christian, and also, for example, when he was spending at night with Maud, how he felt desire as well. So that kind of that push-pull between what he believes as a Catholic and his natural impulses and desires. And again, for me, what that brought through was the rather constrictive, in my opinion, view that religion can bring upon people. I love the pace of the film. Generally, when we see movies these days, they're also kind of quick scene changes, flashing colors and flashing imagery. And I found with this kind of film, it really gave you a chance to get into like a conversation between two people. I love the black and white element to it. I found the cinematography very simple and at the same time kind of almost sensual. It kind of draws you in, makes you want to see what's happening. And as a whole, I found the personal battle between Jean-Louis himself with regards to what his impulses and his drive to be a good Catholic. I thought that was an interesting dynamic in the movie for me personally.
Yeah, there's a real negotiation going on there, isn't there, between the sort of the dogmas and the belief system that he's incorporated in his life. But then when he meets these different people, then there's this, who all have different sort of views and different beliefs, where they're constantly in conflict with each other, aren't they, in terms of negotiating that between them about their relationships. So that's what's really quite fascinating for me, is just the idea, because we have Maud, who's quite sort of, I don't think she seemed fairly apathetic in terms of religion and things, didn't she? And she was quite sort of free-spirited and open-minded. So when they were spending time together, they obviously hit it off quite well and had a rapport and a chemistry and an attraction to one another. But he was in constant conflict with that, sort of trying to negotiate those feelings, but sort of trying to keep them in line with these beliefs, this belief system that he has. And what's interesting to me too is how he sort of used it as a barrier in terms of the relationship with this woman. And then we talked jokingly about the beginning. He spotted this sort of ideal, didn't he, in the church? She was obviously a Catholic because she was in church. She was blonde and young and very pretty, and she was obviously sort of his ideal. And so he just sort of set his mind and said, this is what I want, this is what I'm having. But then when he met somebody who he actually had a real natural rapport and a real chemistry with, he put barriers up. And whereas with the other lady, their relationship seemed a bit more forced and a bit more sort of trying to put square pegs into round holes, or whatever it is. Does it go that way? Or is it round pegs into square holes or whatever? Yes. I can't remember. But anyway, he basically, they because they're both Catholics and they sort of want the same things on paper, they're sort of forcing the issue. Yet with someone that he has that real bond and that real chemistry with, he sort of put those barriers up. And I think we all do that sometimes, don't we? We sort of hold the ideals up in principle rather than actually just accepting life as it comes at you, you see. So I think that's what kind of struck me about the film.
And one of the funny things about the film is that, well, I think Éric Rohmer was a Catholic himself. He sounds, reading his Wikipedia page, he sounds quite a sort of eccentric guy. He's French and he's a monarchist. I don't think there's many monarchists in France nowadays, but anyway, he was one of them. And it said, he was a devout Catholic, monarchist, and ecological zealot who believed cars were immoral polluters. Anyway, but it says he was a devout Catholic. But watching this film, you don't feel like he was a sort of like a dogmatic Catholic. He may have been Orthodox in his own way, but he definitely wasn't dogmatic. In the sense that there's loads of dialogue. Not dialogue, discussion, philosophical discussion. And it's funny, George, you were saying at the beginning how they're sort of almost hypnotized. I was thinking that they're like in a trance during this service. And but then later on, there's a sermon from another church service they go to. There's a sermon from the priest, and he says something along the lines of, which I wrote down: Christianity is not a moral code, but is a way to saintliness. And you think, okay, so all this character Jean-Louis is basically caught up in these moral sort of things, and he's, so in a sense, I suppose the director saying he's got a sort of slightly superficial understanding of Christianity. He's sort of trying to take it as a moral code, but it's not. It's something, well, saintliness, but what saintliness? That's something sort of a bit deeper, and really, really interesting. And one of the things about the sort of Christmas or Christianity of it is that, especially the Christmasness of it, is that at one stage, one of the characters says that Christmas is a big deal for Protestants, which I'd never really thought before, because, you know, living in sort of the UK and basically a sort of a Protestant country, I suppose America is too. We had in the Anglosphere, the sort of basically Anglosphere is a sort of Protestant culture broadly, and so Christmas is a big deal. But in France, yes, it's not such a big deal. That's funny. That's probably why it's not such a big deal in the film as well, which is sort of interesting. They got a sort of, they have lots of saint days, lots of saints' days, and other sort of celebrations and festivals and holidays and whatnot. But that was sort of fascinating insight into it. I'd never realised that Christmas was a sort of a bit more of a Protestant thing than a Catholic.
It's as someone who went to a Protestant elementary school, it's a big deal. There's just a lot of build up to it. It feels kind of like the whole month is building up to Christmas. You know, I have friends who are Catholic, so I noticed that there's a bit of a difference,
really,
in terms of like celebration. And yeah, Christmas is a big deal. I guess because of birth of Jesus, I assume that's a big deal to them, to Protestants. So, but yeah, it's interesting because I wasn't thinking of the sermons as being hypnotic, but now that I'm kind of reflecting more on it, it really is, and that kind of ties into, I mean, religion is not in a negative or positive way, really, but hypnotic. And it soothes a lot of people. It puts them into a trance.
Like getting to the
whether
movies.
that's, yeah. So
you're in a trance as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
Well, one element I really liked in that final sermon, Jonathan, that you mentioned, was the fact that when I'll just say it, the preacher, the gentleman who's giving the sermon, he mentions very much, and I think it kind of ties in with at least how I interpreted the film a little bit, about the fact that our beliefs and things are really kind of a work in progress, aren't they, throughout our lives? And even though this Jean's character in the film, he's kind of in his mid-30s, so he's still sort of got these sort of quite stringent ideas about what his ideals are. Yep. But in reality, all throughout our lives, our beliefs kind of chop and change based on our experiences, and as we get older and we have different sort of things that go on, we tend to be a bit more flexible with it, and it tends to always be, so there isn't any sort of that idea of a saint, someone who's just perfect from birth and never sins and never does anything wrong and always lives by this very strict moral code. But obviously for most of us, that's more of an aspiration, isn't it? It's like we try and live to certain principles and ideas and stuff, but that we have to be flexible in our lives, don't we, in order to build relations with other people and to be able to function in society with people who have different ideas and different beliefs and things as well. So I think for me, that's kind of, and why I think it makes a good Christmas film as well, because I think it's the kind of thing that we need to bear in mind at this time of year when we have a chance to reflect on on all the things that have happened during the year and where our lives are going and what we're going to do next year and all that kind of stuff. So for me, I think it is a good sort of Christmas movie.
Yeah.
Actually, it's interesting when speaking about the sermons in the beginning of the film and at the end of the film. When I recall now discussing it, there's a definite difference in warmth as well. The ones at the end, the one at the end doesn't feel as it feels warmer to me. You're right. It's more about a message of hope and it's true.
Yeah, I think that. I think the first one, you're right, seemed a bit more colder and a bit more stern and a bit more sort of structured, whereas the one at the end felt more hopeful and more positive and more sort of life affirming. And I think that's part of sort of the journey that the character's taking through the film as well. So, yeah.
One of the things I felt that when I'd watched it, I felt like I'm going to have to watch this film again. There's a lot of chat, and not chat, conversation, deep conversation, extremely deep conversation, and I felt like I'd missed a lot, and I wanted to sort of go back and basically watch it again, figure out what they were saying, especially as it was sort of all subtitles, and I was like, read it and watch them and sort of juggle with Pascal's wager all at the same time. And there's quite a lot of sort of Pascal, the French philosopher and scientist, in there. The Jansenists. He keeps on mentioning the Jansenists. So I think I needed to sort of slightly know what the Jansenists were.
Yeah, it might be worth having a dictionary ready when you're watching it the first time to sort of, you might need to pause it and look some stuff up. Yeah. But it should be stressed. I mean, it sounds like it was a first experience for most of us, because I've seen other Éric Rohmer films, but I've not seen this one before. This was my first time as well. But it, like I say, on paper, this might not sound it, but it's quite accessible, isn't it? As a film, it doesn't. You don't sit there and feel like you're watching a bunch of people going blah 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 like this. It's actually, quite engaging and stuff. And I think that should be stressed that it's a film that is quite accessible in a way, despite the fact that it is a bunch of really clever people sitting around having these very deep sort of conversations and alluding to literature and sort of these great mathematical sort of concepts and all this kind of stuff. But it is actually quite engaging. And I think too, it does just make you want to learn more. You do kind of want to go, well, what's he on about? What's he talking about? And you go up and sort of read up about stuff after. So it's kind of a good film for that, just sort of bringing that out in you, your interest and your sort of, wanting to find out more, dig a bit deeper.
Also has amazing performances. Françoise Fabien is Maud, and she's actually terrific. I wasn't aware of her before, but looking at her, sort of reading more about her, it turns out she's got a massive. So she's still alive, got a massive back catalogue of work. Really one of the most respected sort of talents of her generation. And then Jean-Louis is played by a real Jean-Louis Trintignant, and he's one of the great sort of actors of sort of I guess the late 20th century French film, and really good, really compelling talent there as well. Do you know Jean-Louis Trintignant? I mean, Amelia, have you seen films with him in?
No.
Because I watched Under Fire recently, which is in as well.
Yes, that's right. Actually, yes. We just recently watched Under Fire, which is an American film with Nick Nolte. We watched that a couple of weeks ago because it was we had to for reasons, as I said, outside of our control, we had to postpone recording that episode. But you're right, he is in that, isn't he?
Yeah,
he is. Yeah, but he is a familiar face, isn't he? That kind of crops up, and he's probably one of those people. He's probably got a filmography of like 100 films in it,
Something
and he
like
just
that.
sort of pops up in all sorts of things. But he's yeah, quite a seminal figure in French
Yes, yeah,
cinema,
yeah.
indeed. So, and this would be in his sort of peak time, I think,
I
when
think
this
so.
film came out. So,
When you say about being inspired to learn more about characters or the actors when you see a movie, I sort of did, IMDb. I looked him up on IMDb, and I was amazed to see how much work he'd done as an actor, and that he lived up to 91 years old. In fact, passed away last year,
oh, that's a shame.
2022. Sadly, yeah, but he had quite very prolific. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I don't know about you guys, but I always do that. Every time I watch a film, I always then afterwards go and read up
Oh,
about
yeah.
stuff, especially if I really enjoyed it. Like, obviously not every single film, but like anything that I enjoy, I'll go and research it afterwards and read up about stuff. And it's sort of part of the fun and part of the learning about stuff as well, isn't it?
Definitely.
So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, old Françoise Fabian. She's in at least one other Éric Rohmer film. She's in Belle de Jour, Louis Buñuel film, and a Louis Malle film, and she's done more than 100 movies. So
Wow. Oh yeah.
big talent.
Yeah, she's quite captivating in this in My Night at Maud's, isn't she? She's just sort of like she has that sort of she's quite like a magnet, isn't she?
Yeah.
On screen, and you can see her. And what did you make of the friend? We didn't really talk about the friend because that whole encounter comes out of him running into an old school friend, and they have a very funny, even though they're meant to be friends, they seem to have a slightly antagonistic kind of relationship, don't they? And then he takes him along to Maud's, who's I guess is his, like some sort of like she's his lover or something to that effect, and so he takes him along to her house for sort of Christmas Eve dinner, and then that's how this whole sort of situation develops between them. But what did you make of him? Is there anything that we could say about him?
Well, I think through his character, that's where I really got the impression about Jean-Louis's obsession with mathematics and almost formulating his life to some kind of equation, because they had those interesting discussions about Pascal, and then they brought in the whole reasoning element, and then they brought in the religious element as well, but what it meant to be a good Christian, and I don't know if I got this a bit, whether Pascal, his writing as well, gave indications as to what it was to be a good Christian and not a good Catholic. So I thought their interaction, for me personally, drove that element through the film and just gave a bit more about Jean-Louis's character. Almost as a setup for how he was, when they went to Maud's place, I understood a bit more about how he reacted in certain situations as a result of the conversations in the cafe.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair to say. Yeah.
Clever plot, isn't it? Because you've got 4 characters, and each of them knows 3 of them beforehand.
Yes.
But it only becomes clear right at the end that they've all known, how they all sort of fit into this sort of bizarre love triangle, or 2 bizarre love triangles.
Of which he's the outsider, isn't he? He's kind of like, they all kind of know each other in roundabout ways, but he doesn't. So he's kind of the interloper, so to speak, who comes in with these sort of strict moral ideas and things.
Although perhaps not so strict.
No.
I thought the one line where Maud, if I remember correctly, she says to him, you don't know if you want to be a Christian or I got to say, she says, you struggle being a Christian, you struggle being a Don Juan. So it's almost like he doesn't know how he wants to be. And whereas, like what you said earlier, she was more of a free spirit and didn't really seem to battle with those kind of issues.
No, she just accepts her feelings and the things that come up as just natural. Whereas, he has a conflict. So, and she very much challenges that in him. Yeah, something he's struggling with clearly already.
Yeah.
Was there anything else I'm just thinking of time-wise, we could move on to the next film unless anyone had anything in particular you wanted to.
Well, one very quick. I don't want to go on too much about it, but yeah, one of the key things, sort of ideas in it, is about Pascal's wager. So if you're going to, it's a pretty simple idea. It's basically, if there is a God, you should bet on there being a God and believe in him or her, because if there isn't, it doesn't matter, and if there is, you'll reap the benefits. But he uses this sort of Pascal's wager, and he applies it to sort of Marxism as well. So he says, may not be a sort of revolution, but if there is, I want the sort of, even if it's just a 10% chance of, so it's sort of, it's interesting because it makes sort of Pascal's wager, which seems a bit sort of old-fashioned and, you know, he gives the monkeys about that. It sort of makes it relevant about any belief in a sense. It's a sort of, you know, if there's a small chance of it being the right thing, you would sort of, take that step towards it, which is a sort of interesting thought.
Yes, I like that as well. Yes, thanks for bringing that up, Jono. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really good. Anyway, I definitely recommend it.
Well, it certainly pays to be open-minded, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and not be too closed off to anything, because, you never know. All right. Well, on that note, I think we'll leave my night at MAUD'S, except just to say, so we're all based in the UK, but Amelia is in the US. So maybe first, Amelia, if you could just tell us how you, for our listeners in the United States, how did you access My Night at MAUD'S?
So I accessed it. Let me look up real quick because I have it on my search history ready to go. So in America, I accessed it on HBO Max, and it's also on Amazon Prime Video, but you have to have a subscription. I'm subscribed to Amazon Prime Video, so I'm not sure if you can access it without a subscription. And then also it's available on YouTube Prime Time subscription. I'm assuming that's YouTube TV. So if you do have that, you're able to also watch it that way. But for me, I watch it on Max.
Okay.
Oh, brilliant. God, your streaming services over there are just so much better than over here. Like, it's amazing that you just have such easy access to something like this.
It's a blessing and a curse. I feel like it's a lot to keep track of in terms of like who owns the rights of a film and where to find it on a streaming service. You know, if I was in Portland where I'm from, I would probably just rent it on disc because I had access to a video store, to be honest with you.
Wow. So there's still some video stores around.
In Portland, there's a Movie Madness, which has been my childhood video store. So I've been going there since I was 3 years old.
Wow.
But in LA, there's also video stores. It's just more, LA is a car-reliant society. And I don't know how to drive. So it's a little difficult for me to navigate to the video stores in LA.
Yeah. So would you agree with Éric Rohmer that the car is the... what was the thing?
Yes.
The moral polluter.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I'm very anti-car.
Well, Éric Rohmer refused to get in them, apparently.
Wow.
I can't say that I've gone that far, but I do try to avoid cars. I like to walk and I like to train or I like to bus.
Yeah. Which
in Europe is very popular, I guess. So
it is. You can definitely live like that, I suppose. But I could imagine LA, of all cities in the United States, I would imagine it's the least friendly for pedestrians and bus users, public transport users.
LA is the least friendly. They're like so ready to run you over here. They can't wait. I feel like they're just chomping at the bit. Anyway, that's my anti-car soapbox.
Oh no, you're quite right. They're the devil's work there. So, so Éric Rohmer, though, despite his reservations about automobiles, he didn't seem to be too troubled about filming them a lot, did he?
No.
Because there's a lot of stuff in the car in this particular film.
Just as long as he didn't have to get in it.
Or getting the real
Yeah.
transfer from the set to the studio.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan, just quickly, how did you see the film?
Well, on streaming in the UK, it's on the Curzon streaming service, but then you have to sign up to it, which I didn't want to do because I thought I'm bound to forget to cancel it. You get a fortnight free, and I'm bound to forget it. So you can also rent it on YouTube, so YouTube Movies. But the thing was, I paid the money got paid, but normally you see the film in the sort of movies section of your account, but it never turned up, and so. I basically gave up with. I don't know how to get hold of YouTube customer service. It's rather they got lots of barriers in the way, basically. So eventually, I went onto Amazon and bought the sort of 6 Moral Tales. This is one of the 6 Moral Tales DVD box set for £15. It's less, it's pretty cheap each film, and so I've got 5 more to watch.
Brilliant! Yeah, they're all some good films in there, actually. Yeah. But yeah, it's funny with YouTube. I'm not convinced that actually any actual people work at YouTube at all. I just think it's all just literally algorithms now. And there's no actual real humans at all. It's just like this sort of thing that's just become its own sort of,
digital blob.
Yeah, like Skynet.
Yeah.
Well, I'll show you quickly.
Nice.
I picked this up a few years ago when it was on sale for really cheap. It was a bargain. I got this for about 20 quid. It's from France, actually, but it's got English subtitles on it, and it is the 6 Moral Tales. Now, again, because I've had this for a few years, I can't say whether you can still get this or... I don't know, but this is how I watched it, and it does have the other 5 films in together with it. So this was a nice little bargain that I picked up a few years ago. I was lucky still when Jonathan picked this film. I was like, yes, I've got them to hand.
Good.
So that's always nice.
Well, actually, I forgot that today I'm going to a video store in LA, but it's only VHS tapes. It's not, there's no DVDs, there's no Blu-rays. It's only VHS. So maybe, if I'm lucky, maybe I'll find, if not this film, maybe some more Rohmer films. Maybe I'll get to explore his filmography.
Yeah.
That's right.
Brilliant.
And it's lovely, and you'll get those little tracking lines and stuff as well in them, which is always like sort of adds to that sort of vibe, doesn't it?
Maybe that's how he wanted me to see it. Maybe that's how it's meant to be seen.
Did. He's probably like thinking Blu-rays are sort of like, just terrible, aren't they?
Yeah, he could have been anti-Blu-ray if he's, who knows?
He might have been. He might have been. You just never know, do you? How did you watch it?
I subscribed to Prime, and then I took a week trial subscription to was it Curzon? Oh, yeah. So, but thank you for the reminder. I will.
He's going to cancel it.
But I must say, having done that, the wall's just been open to a whole lot of other delicious films. Which I think, oh wow! So thanks for that, David. He's educating me. So it's wonderful to see. Yeah. So I'm going to make the most of it, and perhaps even keep it for another month and just explore some other films. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, you can't go wrong. They got lots of great stuff on there. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Well, on that note, guys, I think what we might do is just take a very brief intermission, and then we will come back and talk about our second film, Fanny and Alexander.
Yes.
So we'll be right back in just a moment. And folks who are listening, please pay extra super special attention to this message that you're about to hear, because I think you're going to want to know this information, and it's going to be very important to you in 2024. So listen carefully. We'll be right back in just a minute.
Thanks for listening to the Film Swap podcast. If you like this podcast, please consider giving the show a rating or leaving a review. This helps other listeners find the show. You can follow the Film Swap on social media. We're on Twitter and TikTok at Film Swap UK, on Instagram at Film Swap Media, and on YouTube at Film Swap_podcast, and at Facebook at Film Swap the Podcast.
To learn more, visit our website at filmswap.uk. And we're back. Welcome back, folks, to Film Swap. Thanks for tuning in. And in case you didn't hear it in the little message there, definitely make a point of bookmarking our website. It's really easy to remember. It's filmswap.uk. And when you go there, you will find all things swappy, film swappy, that you can find links to our show, and there'll be other groovy and cool film nerdiness coming your way on that website in the new year. And I just wanted to mention too, because you've just heard about our social media platforms, and now would be a really good time for you to think about following or subscribing to the show, because this is our last show of 2023. But I can absolutely promise you that if you are like us, nerds, film nerds, proper die-in-the-wool film nerds, you are going to be super excited about some of the plans that we have coming up in the new year. We've already lined up a couple of really super cool guests that I think you're going to really want to
Nice.
You're going to want to hear about that. And of course, our two guests here are going to come back and join us again at other points, hopefully. And we've got another extra guest. We've picked up a couple new guests while we were on the break. Amelia, did you just want to introduce us to your friend there?
Yes, this is Professor. He is a bearded dragon.
Whoa.
And he has a lot of opinions. So, we'll ask him if he likes Fanny and Alexander soon and see what he likes and his favorite Christmas movies are.
He is like totally awesome. So folks who are just listening and aren't looking at the video version of our show, you're missing out on a really funky critter there that Amelia's got. You've got a whole menagerie of animals there with you right now, don't you?
It's a zoo. It's always a zoo here. I have a dog on the ground and a lizard on my shoulder. That's should be like a Christmas song.
And the dog, he was making his opinion felt a few minutes ago. He was voicing his opinion just a minute ago, wasn't he? So we might hear from him again through the course of the show. So listen out for that. And just this is something else that we've not drawn a lot of attention to, but as this is our kind of year-end wrap-up show, I just wanted to mention that on every show we've ever done, we've had an extra special hidden guest. And Jonathan, at his feet, has a little furry friend as well, doesn't he?
I do, a little spaniel called Scout.
Aww.
Yeah.
And he's been there, a constant presence on Film Swap, even though we've very rarely drawn attention to him, but he's always there. Oh, let's see him. Oh, there he is.
Look at him.
It's a she, actually, but there she is.
Oh, it's a she. Oh, beautiful.
What an angel.
What an angel.
Well, it's nice to finally see her because she's been a presence on the show she's usually very well behaved, isn't she, though? She's very quiet most of the time.
Generally, she just curled up next to me.
Yeah.
Sometimes she does end up the wrong side of the door, and then she'll scratch to get in or scratch to get out.
Yeah.
But generally, she just sits there.
Well, I've always, when there's been those odd little sounds in the podcast, I've never said anything because I just want the listeners to assume that it's Jonathan making those noises. But now the truth has come out at last, and it's actually we have a secret dog guest who's sitting there. So anyway, well, it's nice to have finally seen her, and I'm sure she'll be back next year as well.
Thanks, sir.
So anyway, let's on that note, let's get back to the task at hand, which is talking about alternative Christmas motion pictures. And our second feature tonight is the one and only Fanny and Alexander, Ingmar Bergman's 1982, is it? I'm going from memory because my iPad is
82.
standby.
82.
82, yes.
Yeah.
And this time, I mean, I've watched the film a few times before in my day, but this is the first time I elected, because I had the time, because it didn't work out with our sort of previous plans for our episodes. I had a little bit of extra time, so I decided I actually watched the television version of Fanny and Alexander, because originally this was conceived as a television mini-series for Swedish television, and then they ended up editing it down into a feature-length film. So usually that's what I've always seen in the past, but this time I said, well, I'm going to watch the longer version. So that's what I did. So, but it's okay. I think is it fair to say you guys just watched the theatrical version?
Yeah.
Whatever was on Prime or the BFI, British Film Institute.
That's just the cinema version, which is fine, because I think, it covers all the same ground. I think obviously just it's because it's been quite a while between viewings. I didn't really notice particularly any differences between the two versions, except that obviously they just expand some of the scenes a bit longer and things like that. But I can't off the top of my head think of any substantial differences in terms of the narrative or anything. So, but anyway, on that note, what did you think? We'll let you go first, George.
Okay, thank you. Well, my on a personal note, my grandfather was born in 1906, and I always had a very close relationship with him. So I thought, because this was set like 1907, I think, and it was interesting just to get a glimpse into that world. I know that geographically he wasn't from around there, but again, what I mentioned from the last film was, whereas today things are so quick moving, so quick paced, rushing between scene to scene. It was great to get a chance just to get absorbed into each scene, taking the time, taking it slow. And I think I sent you a message saying yesterday that an hour and a half in, suddenly the pace just kind of kicks in. You're like, whoa, okay, you start to feel like you're going on a bit of on a serious ride here. Whereas up to then, it's almost like it builds you up nice and slow, and then it gets you wheeled in, and then it takes you for that ride when it all kind of starts to kick off with the bishop. Colors, sumptuous colors. I thought the use of the ghost, the whole element of the ghost, and how Alexander could see. Alexander was a very interesting character, such a young boy, yet he seemed to tap into the ethereal, and like when he saw the statue moving in the beginning, and at first you're like, wow, what's that about? And it seemed so natural for him. And
the film never draws attention to that, does it? It just sort of it just presents it as a matter of factly. So,
I love the way the house, it just seemed like an endless house of these rooms where Alexander went from room to room, and it looked like he had many adventures, and it really built for me that kind of homely, colorful, warm environment for the kids. I think the first half of the film really captured how it just gave you an idea of where he came from, and the warmth, and the big family, and the family dinners and the family parties. And that's so it's, and I find it interesting how it built it up to an hour and a half, and then suddenly it took that turn.
It does. It shifts. In the television version, it's got that opening Christmas dinner with the family is the whole first episode. Like there's 4 kind of 90-minute episodes in the series, and the whole first one is that Christmas dinner. So whereas in the film it doesn't kind of last quite that long. But that whole bit just establishes the family, like you say, where he comes from. The sort of it's a really warm, happy household. Everyone's really friendly. They're all creative artists
with the theatre. Yes, that's right. So,
and so he comes and, like you say, has a very vivid imagination that he spends a lot of time in this big sprawling house, like any child would, playing and imagining, and you get to see quite his inner imagination brought to life in reality, so to speak. And it really sort of establishes that dynamic. And then, as you say, then all of a sudden there is quite a dramatic change that comes to that suddenly change, just brings this huge change to the whole dynamic. So Amelia, what were your first impressions of Fanny and Alexander? Was this your first time seeing it?
This wasn't my first time, actually. I feel like, I don't think I wouldn't say frequently gets a lot of theatrical run in LA, but one of my theaters that I worked at actually screened it on 35.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, so I've seen it theatrically, but I did rewatch part of it for, sorry, my dog is destroying a Halloween basket right now.
Well, Halloween's passe at this time of year.
It's not on theme. It's not on theme. Get out of the room.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, seeing it on 35 is really beautiful because I love the setting. I love the fantastical elements of the house. The house is just so beautiful. And it does really reflect to me like a child's imagination of what this big house and this like over exaggerated decorations and like architecture and design. And I don't know, I just felt very sucked into that world. So it's hypnotic, I think, for me. And it does kind of remind me, although it isn't, I guess it's that debate again, is it a Christmas film or isn't it a Christmas film? It reminds me of Meet Me in St. Louis a bit. I don't want to quote for sure, but I think they're roughly take place in the same time period, and the focus again is mostly on the children and from the children's perspective and like the children experiencing change and like how that affects them and the family. And I really love films like that, and I think that Christmas is a perfect, again, example of time of change, and it's supposed to be kind of focused on the children and, their dreams and their fantasies. And I think it's, again, Christmas serves as a good backdrop in this film. But yeah, and just the cinematography is so beautiful. I was very taken aback. Like, it'd been a while since I had seen it. But even seeing it on a small screen, like in my living room or on my computer, it's still so breathtaking.
Yeah. It's like all the beautiful grand houses and things that they live in, and the sort of the period detail and everything. It is just absolutely gorgeous to look at. I'm quite envious of you because I've never seen this in the cinema. So that must be wonderful to see.
The Victorian houses are so over the top. Yeah. But it works so well, especially like Christmas is over the top in some ways, It's very exaggerative. And I think a time period like this and a lot of like the grandiosity with the Victorian houses, I think that works very well. It all ties together really nicely. I found it interesting when I was reading about the film is that in Sweden, they consider this a holiday film. And I don't know if that's because obviously Bergman is from Sweden, so maybe that's like, and it does there is Christmas in the film, but I don't know if I guess I don't have a consensus as to why they consider it a Christmas film that's like watched every year. That's a tradition.
Okay.
Well, I think the opening bit of the film is set at Christmas time, and I think thematically it very much fits in, much like My Night at MAUD'S. It's like thematically quite similar in terms of examining the sort of, beliefs and principles and how they impact your everyday life. So, people who say that Die Hard's a Christmas film because it takes place at Christmas time. But, so on that basis, Fanny and Alexander...
It's just an American thing. You wouldn't understand. It's just an American thing. We like to blow things up and, that's
Christmas.
That's the holidays for us. I mean, you have Boxing Day, and we have blowing up buildings and Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
Just a cultural difference, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think I mean, Fanny and Alexander is a film you could enjoy and watch any time of
Yeah,
year. But I
yeah,
think you could argue that it makes a perfect Christmas film. It's a perfect holiday film
yeah,
because of its emphasis on family and on initially celebration
yeah.
and also just overcoming challenges and
Yeah.
things like that as well. So I think it fits. But we haven't heard from Jonathan yet, so let's give Jonathan a chance to jump in and see what he thinks of Fanny and Alexander.
Well, I had never seen it. Never seen it in the cinema. Never seen it on streaming or video or DVD or anything. And I thought, wow, what a film! I mean, that this Christmas scene, which I guess is it a sort of 3 hour film as a film, and this Christmas must go on for the first hour of it. And it's endless, and it's just amazing, so sumptuous. All the characters are pissed, and sorry, pissed as in drunk, not as in angry. sorry, sorry, the British pissed rather than American pissed. All the characters are sort of drunk, and there's sort of a flaming cauldron of some alcoholic
Oh, I love that.
booze, which are going around the house and singing sort of songs and just so extravagant because it's basically the family is they own a theatre. It's somehow or some of them are involved with the theatre. I think all of them are, but they're very theatrical, and it's just absolutely that bit I loved. And then it does change, and as you both alluded to, it moves beyond Christmas into the rest of the year, and the sort of story develops. But really amazing performances, great dialogue again, looks amazing, all the sets, because I think they built all these. I sort of somehow assumed that this was a house that they filmed in, and the bishop's palace was a proper bishop's palace. No, they built it all in the studio. And extraordinary, a real experience, because it's so long. It's a sort of epic. I mean, it's a domestic epic. It's not, they're not in the desert or whatever. But really great. And funny enough, my granny was born in 1906, so it's the same thing, George. So that thought occurred to me as well. Yeah, this is sort of a bit like what it must have been like back then, I have a sort of family connection to Sweden as well, so I'm always sort of a bit interested in that. And great! What a great film! Terrific.
How interesting was that stark reality between, like we said, the sumptuous, lavish colors of the decor in the Eckhart home, the home, and then when you go to the bishop's place, it's just so stark, and the bars in the window and the lack of color.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah, well, it feels very sterile, just very,
Well, we should mention to the listener, because basically the first part of the film, as we said, establishes the family and the dynamic, and that they're a creative family of artists and musicians and actors. And there's that wonderful scene when the father, who's constantly spouting lines from these plays, and he's very sort of grandiose, and he comes in at night when the kids are still up at night. He comes into the room and he starts to tell them a story, doesn't he? And again, I don't know, because I watched the longer television version, so I don't know from memory what's included in the film or not. But he tells this lovely, grand story to the kids, very theatrical thing at night. And, he uses the furniture and the chairs to tell this story. And it's wonderful, and it really establishes his father and the relationship that they have with this man who's very imaginative and very creative and very kind and generous and open. And then you bring in that contrast later with this bishop character, because obviously the family, we obviously want to try and avoid spoilers as much as possible, but the family suffers a bereavement. And so what happens then is that the children then have to their mother remarries to this bishop character who's like, I guess he's quite a senior figure in the church community in this community, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he is very stern, much like the character, because I think thematically the two films we're talking about kind of have parallels, because it's very much again about this conflict between the natural and the creative and the imaginative, and the sort of the inflexibility of the dogma and the principles and the religious ideals that this man aspires to, or he tries to instill in people.
Kind of an Old Testament love.
Yeah.
Harsh. Yeah.
What really struck me about it too is that a lot of times throughout the sort of, because this obviously creates conflict between the children and this new sort of father figure who's quite complete polar opposite to their actual biological father, but a lot of the things that he says, when he's talking about like incidents about lying and, all these things, you can't really argue on the face of it with him, can you, in terms of what he's saying? Because, he's got a point, but it's just in the way that he's so sort of draconian about imposing that on people, and how he takes everything so rigidly and so, so forcefully. And actually uses it really as an abusive thing, rather than what it should be, as like a sort of a principle that you try to live by. But it's the lack of flexibility that creates the conflict in the film. Just much like Night at MAUD'S, isn't it? Where there's that conflict between the sort of, but obviously not to the extreme that we see here. So.
One of the words the bishop uses is he talks about his strong, harsh love, or something like that.
Yes.
I think I wrote down. It's like, yeah, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an extraordinary character. But one of the interesting things I heard that, so this is partly autobiographical, I think, that because Ingmar Bergman's dad was he a bishop or a senior cleric anyway? But Ingmar Bergman says that the bishop is Alexander is partly him, but actually the bishop is partly him as well, which is sort of interesting insight into it. One thing that occurred to me, because in the first film, My Night at MAUD'S, we learn that sort of Christmas may be slightly a sort of Protestant sort of festival rather than a sort of Christian festival, more as specifically Protestant one. But in this, which is in Sweden, so they're all Lutherans, the bishops are Lutheran. Early on, I wrote down one of the characters says Yule again. So of course we know that actually Yule is a sort of like pre-Christian sort of pagan festival. So nobody's really, in both these films, nobody's really sure where this sort of Christmas business comes from. So the Catholics are saying, it's really the Protestants, and then in this one, it's the Protestants are saying, sort of almost saying, it's the pagans. But it's a very sort of pagan Christian Christmas at the beginning of this one, isn't it? With the sort of the sort of the sex and the drinking and all this sort of stuff. Song, wine, women, and song, basically, as it were.
I also found it interesting how at one stage, I'm not sure how much to give away for the film or.
Well, I mean, we try not to spoil, but sometimes at the same time, in order to talk about it, we will end up doing that. So don't worry.
But when the mother wants to leave and she's scared to, because he'll be able to take the children, and that whole kind of patriarchal, misogynistic kind of really hold that he as a bishop had, and it's like the whole family had them enslaved, and there was nothing that they could basically do about it. And I thought that was interesting. Just to look at that as well, and just the power that the church has, and he as a central figure of that church, how much power he held and how much respect he would have had in the community, and to be able to abuse that power.
Yeah, Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I think that was a key point of the film. And then the film kind of becomes a little bit of a suspense thriller at a certain point too, doesn't it? When they, it could be becomes a jailbreak film in a sense, doesn't it? So it's kind of, it kind of goes in that direction at a certain point. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I think, I mean, there's lots of amazing performances. All his Alexander's, or the Ekdal family, all these sort of uncles are extraordinary. Uncles and aunts, extraordinary sort of characters. And but Alexander himself, yeah, what an amazing! I think he was 10. Was he 10 or 11 when this was made?
Incredible.
Extraordinary performance. We were talking about. Old what's his name in Paper Moon? What a great
Tatum O'Neill, yeah.
Oh, right.
Mm.
Okay.
a few weeks ago, and
I love her.
Is
Oh, yeah,
anyone
it's a wonderful film.
yeah, another really amazing, powerful performance from a young actor.
Yeah. It should be pointed, I don't know if you guys noticed, but it's called Fanny and Alexander, which are the two children. Yeah, but it very much focuses on Alexander more than Fanny. Doesn't really have a huge role to play in the film, does she? I mean, she's kind of there. She's always present. And there are a few scenes where she engages in there's one key scene with the bishop that she's quite involved in. But generally speaking, I was just curious why he called it Fanny and Alexander rather than just Alexander or something else. I don't know, because she isn't really, it's really more Alexander's the focus of the film, isn't he?
Yeah.
So I don't know if any of you found that as well.
Yeah. I don't know. Is the TV one? Does it have a bit more of Fanny in there?
Well, again, no, I can't because I didn't. If I didn't watch the theatrical version, so I don't know off the top of my head what the real differences are between the two cuts of the film.
Yeah.
But even in the longer television version, Fanny is more generally in the background.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only a few key scenes where she becomes a bit more prominent.
Yeah.
So I just thought that's something that struck me, is that it's called Fanny and Alexander, but very much the focus seems to be on Alexander and his conflict with the bishop and that kind of struggle between the imagination, the creative person, and the more rigid sort of inflexible person.
I got the sense that through the film she was a great source of strength for Alexander, and they always seemed to be as a duo, and especially in that one key scene, like you say, how she stood true to her brother's word and stood up for him, and she was quite metallic and very strong. And at night time they'd always go to bed in the same room together, and it seemed like they were always there for each other. And when they were at the bishop's place as well, it seems like when they were being held, they were together.
So I suppose that's a good point, that even though she's not sort of prominent in terms of dialogue and things, she is always present, and she is, like you say, very much a sort of a key person for Alexander in terms of that family sort of support.
Family, yes, absolutely.
And it's very much I mean, the whole family, the women are kind of the strong characters, aren't they? Because even all the uncles and stuff, they're shown to be quite, weak-willed in some ways, and quite prone to their selfishness and their sort of, internal sort of struggles. The one chap is very much feels sorry for himself quite a bit, and is quite harsh and horrible to his wife. But obviously his wife is a very strong person who sort of puts up with the abuse and the depression and all the stuff that kind of comes from him. But she's there supporting him still, no matter what, and stuff. So all the female characters in the film are the one, and the grandmother is kind of the head of the family. And so it's very much the women in the film that are the ones that show the real strength and the real sort of determination, and they're the ones who sort of resolve things practically when the men are constantly struggling with their egos and their other stuff. So I think from that perspective, maybe that's where the Fanny part in the title comes in. It's like
one of the themes seems to be these sort of polarities and contrasts. So his dad wears sort of white, and the bishop wears black, and the first house is sort of florid and sort of full of color, and the second one's sparse and white, painted white. But I guess in a sense, he's sort of says more, and his sister is much more silent. So she's the silent side of the. But she doesn't mean she's insignificant, but she's just a sort of a silent presence. And these two that's another contrast, I guess, between words and sort of a silent presence. And yeah, I mean, but some of the dialogue is extraordinary as well, really extraordinary. And the sets. The one set we haven't talked about is Isaac's house. Isaac, or I think is that Isaac Jacoby. So they end up, without telling you how, they end up in this house of this chap Isaac Jacoby, who's I think an antiques dealer, and so that house is extraordinary. It's full of puppets and sort of Chinese sculptures, and it's like a sort of, it's like almost like the something from Blade Runner or something like that. Actually, it's really terrific.
Yeah, and is it in the theatrical cut of the that strange sort of, well they say it's a man, but it seemed to be, there was a bit of an androgynous character who was basically locked in a cage. Ishmael, but who's literally, and that's quite an extraordinary scene where they basically take the boy and just say, here, go and he wants to see you, go in and see him, and they sort of shove him and lock him in this cage with this extraordinary person who's a little bit menacing and creepy at the beginning, and so what did you make of that?
That's part of the sort of dreaminess of the film, because the character is called Ismail, which I think is a bloke's name, but it's played by Stina Ek. The character is played by Stina Ekblad, who is, it says according to Wikipedia, a Swedish-speaking Finnish actress. So I think she is played by a woman, but the character is meant to be a man. I don't know, but it's a sort of, I guess, a sort of slightly non-binary character, basically, we might say now. And the film is, it does have there's sort of this sort of weird dreaminess to it as the film proceeds. No.
There is a few moments like that too, where during the bit when the chap goes in to try and smuggle the kids out in the box, and he does this because the bishop runs up the stairs to sort of see if the children are still there, and we know that they're not, so we're like, oh god, he's gonna get caught or whatever, but he does this kind of like this, and then it's like the kids are there on the floor. And what did you make of stuff like that? Because there's a few moments like that where it's kind of a little bit open to interpretation, where it is almost like they've willed to God to perform a miracle, so to speak, in order to get them out of this situation that they're in.
Yeah, and within the context of the film, that the poetic license just allows you to just go with the flow and just say, actually, maybe they do will God to do.
And that's the thing. It's completely open to interpretation, because you kind of go, well, what happened there? I'm not sure, but could it be that, or could it be this, or So what did you think of that? I don't know, Amelia.
I have to go back and rewatch it, because that's an interesting point. I haven't really thought about it, but it does lend itself to the fantasy element of the entire film, which I love. And I love the ongoing theme of, and now that we are talking about it, I see the tie between the two films is that they're watchable anytime other than Christmas.
Yeah.
Because everyone is, any point in their life, they could be young, old, it could be Christmas or it could be summer. There's always going to be a time of change. And, people deal with change in all different sorts of ways. And so these two films are different types of change and different characters experiencing them. One has more of a family dynamic and how that affects the family. And so I think that's why these films work so well. Like you said, you could watch them anytime, really. Fanny and Alexander, when I saw it, it was being screened in summer, It wasn't being really positioned as a Christmas film. But yeah, I really would like to rewatch it, and maybe even rewatch like the television cut. That would be really interesting to compare the two.
Yeah, well, my mother-in-law's coming over for Christmas on Wednesday, and she's originally from LA, funny enough, although she lives in France now. But anyway, I was thinking, yeah, we should watch the TV version of Fanny and Alexander when the children are in bed. She might really enjoy it because it's so much.
At the end of the film, where Gustav Adolf is giving that beautiful speech at the
Oh,
end,
yeah.
they're all together again,
Yeah.
and seated in that familiar, beautiful, colourful setting with family and warmth. And that's, again, the real Christmas message, or,
the film kind of comes around full circle, doesn't it? It starts off with a family celebration, and it's Christmas, and everybody's, and all the sort of things that are going on there. But ultimately, the film takes you on that journey, but it kind of comes around full circle. And it is ultimately very life-affirming. And I think that's why it works as as a holiday film, because it is very life-affirming. And brings a lot of, hope and it shows people going through these struggles, but overcoming them in a positive way. And I think it works really well as a holiday film. But yeah, you could watch it any time of year. So, folks, if you're listening to this in March or whatever, don't think that you have to wait to watch either of these films, because I think they work just as well during a heat wave.
And one of the interesting things, I guess, about this film is that the time period over which it is set is pretty much 9 months, isn't it? Because it sort of finishes with this sort of christening scene. And in the very first scene, we get the baby is sort of conceived, I suppose, out of them. And yeah, but actually that wouldn't quite make sense, because then the other one was later, wasn't it? The anyway, but at least one of them is sort of from 6 months onwards.
And there is ghosts. There's like ghosts of Christmas past that come into the film as well, isn't there? So excuse me. There's like lots of sort of times when Alexander's imagination. It actually isn't even just Alexander, isn't it? Some of the other characters are visited upon by ghosts, in a sense, like people from their past who come to relay some sort of a comment or message about what's happening at the minute, don't they? So
old Hamlet's there in the sort of quite a prominent, a bit probably if Pascal is the sort of main sort of Pascal's ideas are being thrown around in My Night at MAUD'S. Sort of Hamlet is the main presence in the background of this one. Like there's sort of, because they're putting on Hamlet at the theatre, and then there's this ghost. Well, of course, ghosts are an important part in Hamlet.
Are we able to talk about the end bit, or not really? When, in terms of Alexander being able to see the ghosts, and then he gets
of course.
He gets a visit from the bishop as well.
Yes,
just as a little reminder that it's all good, but
it's that conflict as well for Alexander, because he obviously that experience is always going to be with him.
Yes,
but also just the fact that, like we all do, we all struggle with our conscience and our and I guess maybe that idea that the bishop's always standing behind you
That's it.
through life when you're making decisions or when you're, um, whatever experiences you're going to have, there's always a bishop standing behind you ready to smack you to the floor and go,
That's right.
no,
yes.
dude, that's not, you shouldn't be doing that. So that's kind of, I think that's, that was quite a powerful moment, sort of frightening, but also
it was very,
quite prophetic as well, I think, in terms of Alexander and his life going forward, the things that like we all struggle with, aren't we? Because I think that film is incredibly universal, I think, in its themes and stuff. Obviously, it's set in turn of the 20th century in Sweden, but it's obviously, I think, deals with quite universal sort of experiences that we all can relate to, I think. So that's what makes a great film, isn't it? A great Christmas film as well. So on that note, I don't know if is there anything else that we want to touch on in Fanny and Alexander.
No, just oh goodness, I'm gonna have to watch it again as well, especially after having discussed it today. Some points that were brought up. Just go and have another look.
Well, yeah, it's definitely something that lends itself to. I mean, I've seen it a few times in my life. Never, unfortunately, in a cinema. I've always just seen it on television screenings and stuff. But this time it was nice to watch that longer sort of version experience. And then I watch it. The plan was to watch just one episode over 4 nights, but I ended up actually watching the middle 2 together in a bit of a binge there because I was just wanted to see what was going to happen, basically, and I couldn't stop. So I just kind of kept plowing through. So I actually watched it over 3 nights rather than 4. But you do have that option of doing that. It's at least the advantage of watching it on video and of having it sort of broken up like that is that you don't have to sit and watch it all in one great big huge marathon. You can sort of split it up into sort of more manageable sort of segments and stuff. So that's quite a nice thing. So, so I guess we're all agreed that we would recommend to people out there to check out both of these films.
Definitely.
So how did you watch Fanny and Alexander?
I watched it as subscribing through Prime onto the BFI.
BFI
trial,
player,
which is actually a month trial as opposed to the Curzon one, which is a week.
Oh, great! So you can cram in a few things. There's lots of great stuff on
that.
Yeah, I'm always like one key thing there. I don't think any of the episodes we've ever done where I haven't ended up plugging the BFI in some way. But just again to stress to people, we don't get sponsored or anything in any way. So when I plug the BFI, it's coming from here and not from my pocketbook or anything like that. So just to point that out. But the BFI player is great. In the UK, that and sort of Mubi, I would say, are the 2 streaming services that are the best. The best in terms of the quality of what's available for you there to view. So,
nice.
Jonathan, how did you watch it?
I do have the BFI player, but you recommended that I get it on Amazon because the DVD or Blu-ray, whatever it was going.
Oh, yes.
£7. So,
yeah, I sent him a message because I noticed on Amazon it was on sale for like £7 for Fanny and Alexander on Blu-ray. So I sent him a message and said, I think we're going to be talking about this soon, so you should get this.
So in that Blu-ray, it comes with the 2 discs. 1 disc is the film, and 1 is the TV series. One thing it's a bit of a shame because there's a documentary about the making of the film called, I think it's just called The Making of Fanny and Alexander, and that isn't on either of those discs, I don't think, which is a shame. But anyway, I'm sure I can cope.
There is, yeah. But it is available in the Criterion set because that's how I watched it. I'm not going to try and get it down because I'll bring about 18 pounds of things on top of our head. But I've got the Criterion. It's called Ingmar Bergman Cinema. It's a big, massive box set that they did a few years ago.
Yeah.
That it's fairly definitive. It's not completely definitive. It's not got every single one of his films, but it's pretty comprehensive. and it's so that's definitely worth making the investment for, because it's got something like sort of 30 odd films in it, plus loads and loads of it's got that making of Fanny and Alexander documentary and loads of other supplementary materials and things on it, and it's got a nice lovely book as well. So it's definitely worth taking the plunge, because you can't go wrong with Bergman. Frankly, it's sort of like every house should have one, really. I would say. So Amelia, in America, how did you access Fanny
Yeah, so I watched
and Alexander?
it. Can't forget Alexander.
No, definitely.
I watched it on HBO Max, the same as the other film that we talked about
Wow.
earlier. And I know that it's also available on Prime, but again, you have to have a subscription. I have a subscription. I just chose to watch it on Max. And then I know it's also available on YouTube TV if you have YouTube TV, which I think is a package subscription, and you can also view it on there as well.
Beautiful. Well, that's great. So it's pretty accessible. I think as far as Bergman's concerned, I think it's considered one of the key titles in his filmography. I think it's kind of in there with sort of The Seventh Seal and, a few, one or two others. Like it's kind of, kind of a key title. So it's definitely shouldn't be too hard to come by anyway. Wherever you are, I'm sure it's probably easy to get either on physical media or on streaming. So, well, that's great. So I think maybe at that point we'll sort of wrap up talking about our two main films. And what we wanted to do is just have a little bit of a fun bit, because it's the holidays. We wanted to just maybe take a moment to go around the table here and give everyone a chance just to talk, maybe mention one or two sort of alternate Christmas movies or favorite Christmas movies that they would recommend to people to check out. And it's okay. They don't have to be obscure sort of things. It's just whatever your family or, personal favorites or things that you like to watch around the holiday time. So why don't we start with George?
Oh, okay. Thanks. I recently, last year, I saw for the first time a movie called Fat Man with Mel Gibson, where he plays Santa,
Right.
and it's a bit of an edgy take on Santa Claus, and very interesting storyline. So I'd highly recommend that. And then there's a great film, really low budget, but so bad it's so good kind of film called The Three Doggeteers Save Christmas. The Three Doggeteers Save Christmas, about these three little pooches that have an amazing adventure saving the family Christmas, which are lots of fun. And
oh, brilliant.
Those are the two I'd recommend.
And do you think they're easily sort of?
But yes, I know that Three Doggeteers I bought on iTunes.
Oh, okay.
And Fat Man is accessible on either Sky TV or Prime in the UK. I can double check that with you now, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but yeah.
Okay. So what's it called? It's called Fat Man.
It's called Fat Man, yeah.
And it's got Mel Gibson as Santa Claus.
As Santa, yeah. or St. Nicholas.
As St. Nicholas. Okay. Yeah. All right. Interesting. Okay. Is that a more recent film?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Well, that one must have passed me by somehow. I don't know. That's interesting. Okay. We'll keep an eye out for that. Thank you for that. That's brilliant. So Amelia, how about you? Is there any particular Christmas favorites that you have or things that you could recommend to people?
So I don't know if I would call it alternative Christmas, but every year I watch, and usually I watch it in a theater on 35 millimeter, this really beat up print of Silent Night, Deadly Night, which is, I'm into Christmas horror.
Mm-hmm.
So
brilliant.
I just love,
I think that's a Canadian film, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I think it is. Yeah, the old tax shelter days. Brilliant.
Yeah, I just really think it's fun. It's dark-ish, but it's so kind of goofy and odd and unsettling and kind of crazy that it was made. And I don't know. I just like slashers, and I think that like I like the irony of taking something very
Just
happy.
to clarify, you like slasher movies, you mean?
Yes.
You don't like slashers.
No, I don't
Okay.
endorse. I don't endorse real life slashings. But I do like taking something like Christmas that's supposed to be really happy and juxtaposing that with something really terrible. I haven't seen the entire film series, so I can't really speak on the film series as a whole, but the first one is like, you can't really go wrong. The runtime's only like an hour and 25 minutes. So,
Oh, great.
I mean, that's, in my opinion, a perfect runtime.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think it's fun to watch, especially with like, I would recommend it with it doesn't have to be with a crowd, but you know, like friends or family that are also like-minded and don't mind seeing like blood and, you know, a really psychotic grandfather that they have to visit at the beginning of the film, who warns him about Santa Claus and how terrible he is. So yeah, you can watch that on, you know, if you're okay with ads, you can watch that on the Roku channel. If you have a Roku TV, or if you just can watch Roku on your computer, they like also have kind of an on-demand with ads kind of streaming channel, so you can watch that for free. On Sling TV, it's also free, and you can pay $3.99 on Amazon Prime to watch it as well.
Yeah.
And the other film, also horror Christmas, is Black Christmas with Olivia Hussey. I watch that every year also. And again, it's a stalker film. So, and it has
Christmas stockings. That's what we like.
Christmas stocking. And it has John Saxon in it, who I'm like in love with. I have like a crush
God.
on.
I love John Saxon. He's so cool.
Yeah, I have a huge crush on
I like
him.
it when he comes
love
up
him.
in those Italian police films
Yes.
and stuff as well. He's brilliant.
Yeah, so it has Olivia Hussey in a really amazing sweater with weird hands on it, and also John Saxon trying to find the stalker. And I don't know, it's unsettling, it's interesting, and you know, if you want to kind of branch out into non-traditional Christmas movies, I think it's a good one to start with. And you can watch that for free on YouTube, actually. It's with ads. I don't know. Some people don't like ads. I'm used to watching cable television, so I'm used to ads. So I don't really mind. But yeah, it's free on YouTube, so if it's your first time watching it, you should definitely go check it out for Christmas.
Well, that's amazing. That's cool. So you like a grindhouse Christmas?
Yes. A very grindhouse Christmas, yeah.
Well, that's brilliant, because I was going to ask you, actually, because you work in a cinema and you have access to all this stuff, and obviously just between us, never mind the fact that we're going out published online for anyone in the world to listen to, do you ever take the opportunity to set up a reel in the cinema yourself and go sit in and watch a film just on your own, like at a private screening? And again, don't answer that if it's going to get you into any trouble.
Well, at my theater in Portland, I would screen films for my friends. You know, I invited a friend to watch Matilda. I have a print of Matilda on 35. So I screened that for her. And that theater was a little bit easier to go out and watch things once I have it threaded up, because it was ground level. The theater that I'm working at now, it's a little more difficult because I have to go down a flight of stairs and then walk out into the lobby and then go into the theater. So it's a little bit more of a like effort. But I have threaded up, like I have a random reel of Gremlins. Like I have reel 5, which is takes place where the Gremlins are all in the theater watching Snow White. I've threaded that up before and like have watched it in the booth. but I didn't leave the booth because it was too much of a ordeal for for myself.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I could say I think if you have to like go for a little walk around too, because then you wouldn't be up for the real changes either, would you? You'd have to sort of run back
Yeah,
to
I'd
go
have
and
to run
change.
back.
Yeah.
Not very
Well,
religious.
I mean, still, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Well, thank you for the slasher Christmas, because I think, yeah, that is a nice alternative from all the gooey, feel goody kind of soppy stuff. Sometimes it is good just to sort of get in there and see something, kind of nasty and sort of like this,
Yeah.
so I think that's pretty cool. And actually, Black Christmas, if I'm not mistaken, was directed by Bob Clark, right? Who's a
Mm-hmm.
Canadian filmmaker who
Yes.
also made Porky's, and
Oh,
he
wow.
also made one of the films that I'm going to talk about. But I'm going to hand over to Jonathan first. I'm going to go last. So, Jono, have you
Yep.
got some Christmas vibes for us?
Well, my Christmas vibes are, I guess, one film I sort of associate with Christmas a lot is Oliver, the musical. It's not particularly Christmassy, although it does have a snow scene at the beginning where Oliver's being sort of sold by Mr. Bumble, walking around. But somehow this is just something for me. I think it just must have. We watched it when I was 5 or something at Christmas, and it's just like there as a Christmas movie for me now.
Hmm.
And so something I quite sort of like musicals at Christmas somehow.
Hmm.
And but then I guess another sort of alternative, not exactly Christmas, was sort of later on in the sort of the Christmas break. You got New Year's Eve and Strange Days. That Strange Days is an LA film set on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, I think.
Yeah, I remember that one. I haven't seen that since it came out, but I do remember that. Has that got Ray Fiennes in it? Yeah.
Mines, yes,
Yeah.
a terrific movie actually. So yeah, that's sort of later in the holiday period, directed by Catherine Bigelow or Bigelow. Who went on, I suppose, to be a bit more successful. Yeah, so those two.
Brilliant. Okay, and I was just gonna because I said about Bob Clark, but and this is a film we literally just watched yesterday. I showed it to my kids for the first time. But there's a film of his. Again, it's not particularly obscure or anything, but it's a film called A Christmas Story from the
Yes.
early '80s.
No.
Yeah, and it's a film that I just think is a really terrific Christmas film because it's got a little bit of a sarcastic edge to it, and it's a little bit quirky, but it kind of tells a nice sort of film story, Christmas story, sorry, from the viewpoint of a child, and it does have a little bit of a biting satirical edge where it's sort of poking fun at the consumerism and the sort of the more ridiculous sort of ritualized sides of Christmas. And it's got a nice nostalgic feel because it's set during the, I guess, what, the 40s or something. And it's sort of based on a writer, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, who also narrates it. But I think it's just like kind of a fun kind of Christmas movie because it's not quite so sentimental. And it has a little bit more of a sort of a satirical edge to it, like I said. So it's a film that I quite like. I showed it to my kids for the first time just yesterday, and I don't think they didn't quite know how to take it because it was a little bit quirky and a little bit something out of the not that they weren't quite used to. So they were kind of like I'm not quite sure what's going on here.
It's amazing you got your kids to sit through an hour and a half or something, bro. It's amazing that you got them to sit and follow her an hour and a half.
I have
That's
them
a
watching
feat.
all sorts of stuff. I always have to try very quickly to push the envelope. I have to kind of, settle, sort of do it subtly. Every once in a while,
brilliant.
I sneak stuff in, but they are pretty game
That's amazing.
for most stuff. They'll give it a go. And they did. They were quite struck. There was quite a funny scene with quite a psychotic Santa and a very sort of, set in a department store, which is quite funny. And I think they got quite a kick out of that bit. And they had a good giggle at a couple other bits. But anyway, I think that's a good film. That's just sort of like a little bit of a, a fun sort of Christmas film that I quite like. And I'm with Jonathan too. I think Christmas is a good time for music, like musicals. Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers would be something that'll come out at Christmas, or things like what is it, Holiday Inn with Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire again, and things like that. I think make great Christmas films. A bit of music and a bit of singing and things like that, and Ingmar Bergman and Éric Rohmer as well for Christmas. Definitely when you want to, the thinking man's Christmas films as well. You want to sit down and think about your existential crises and your, question, where you've been and where you're going and all that kind of stuff. So I think they make great Christmas films as well.
We're having an existential.
If you guys are all right to, and again, I just want to apologize for my croaky voice because I am getting over.
Brilliant, man. It's been good.
Well, I've been getting over a bit of a cold, so I might sound a little bit croaky. I think it's been getting worse as we've been going on. But
your sins are forgiven.
Oh, sorry. Say again, Amelia.
Your sins are forgiven. It's okay.
Oh, good.
We're all sinners.
Hopefully.
We're all sinners.
Yes, we are indeed. And I just wanted to, if you guys will indulge us just for a minute, this is, of course, the last episode of Film Swap for 2023, which is our first year of Film Swap. And I just wanted to pass it over to Jonathan and just ask how he's feeling about Film Swap. And have you got any reflections or things you wanted to say about like a favorite episode or anything that you just wanted to pass comment on as we've reached kind of a milestone in our podcasting journey.
Yeah, when did we start? In March, was it?
No, we started in January, pretty much at the beginning of the year. Not quite the beginning of January, but we kind of the second or third week of January is when the first episode went out.
That's amazing. So that's a sort of testament to the fact that it's flown by, because I thought it was in March. I thought it was a whole 3 months later. And it's been really fun, and I've seen lots of films that I wouldn't have seen otherwise necessarily, and it's made me sort of get back into my movie watching, and I've really enjoyed it. It's really good, and I look forward to doing lots more.
Brilliant. Have you got any favorite episodes that you wanted to mention?
Well, I do. I actually like Cinematic Swordplay, which was one of our least favourite with the sort of general public for some reason.
Yes, yeah.
I think The Duelists is a really fun film. Yeah, and I really liked the Road Movies one as well more recently.
Yeah.
American Honey, what an incredible film. And Paper Moon, actually, both of them really, really good.
Yeah, my favorite episodes, I think, were very much, and I'm not just saying this because Amelia happens to be here again with us tonight, but I thought our Real Experience episode was particularly really good.
It was,
and I quite liked our man-woman episodes as well when we did What a Guy and Girl Power was the name of the episode that we did. I thought those episodes turned out particularly well, and I was somewhat proud of them. I thought they were pretty good as well. But I've really enjoyed the whole experience of doing this. I've learned a lot as we've gone along. Social media has been quite interesting. We've had lots of people reached out to us, and we've and even that's how we met Amelia, was through Twitter or whatever it's called now. And so, it's been quite an interesting experience.
Congratulations, guys. Congratulations on your first year. That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing.
And I really appreciate you guys taking time out to spend time talking about films with us. And I hope next year maybe we could talk you into coming back and joining us again.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah, well, definitely. We've already got plans with Amelia for next Christmas. We're going to do Christmas Stalkers, Christmas Stalkings. That's going to be our episode for Christmas next year. And,
yes, I've already planted the seeds. So,
well, we'll book in the date now so that we all have it sort of planned in our calendar in advance, and we'll get that in because that would be a great episode. But hopefully, Amelia, you'll come back and join us again to talk about some other cool stuff because it's great having you on. You're always great fun to talk to,
Definitely.
and pretty awesome guest. So please
Thank
come
you.
back and see us again, and same with you, George.
Thanks, thanks,
It's been
guys.
great. Thanks for coming in.
George.
And folks, I want to say again, we got huge plans in 2024. We're going to be taking it up a notch. We got some really cool guests that we've been talking to about getting them onto the show. So as well as you can look forward to seeing these two back, we got some other really interesting subjects and guests coming up. So we hope you'll come back and join us in the new year. And we hope wherever you are in the world, and whatever, however you celebrate the holidays or whatever, we hope you have a really safe and happy time with your friends and your family. And wherever you are, take care of yourself, watch lots of cool films. And we hope to see you all sometime in sort of maybe the second or third week of January. We'll be back to bring you some more film swappy action.
Definitely.
All right. So on that note, happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Take care, and we'll see you all soon.
See you soon.
See you in the new year.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Oh, the things these nerdy middle-aged men get up to.